I'm awake, so let's make a video. I'm awake but tired. I might try to go back to sleep after I make this video. I was up till 2 a.m. last night working on the Back to the Future Predicts analysis. And then I woke up with a tummy ache around, what was it this time? 6:30 maybe. So what, I slept for like 4 hours. That's so good. I'm gonna get sick again probably. But my brain is just burning up. I come from a lineage of miners. Really, I suspect that I come from a lineage of witches somehow, stretching back into my more distant Celtic origins. I want to talk about a couple things here, maybe. I want to talk about this mining thing. There's some interesting stuff there, maybe. And I want to talk about this witch thing, because there's some interesting stuff there, maybe. The anima and that whole way of relating to these experiences was something that came a little bit later. Initially, I just knew that a spirit was emerging within me. At first, I didn't know what that was. It was some strange pictures that were forming in my head to do with snakes, and loops, Ouroborean things. Then that started to condense, as it were, into something that felt like a center, a personality almost. Snake spirit. And then it became clear that that was feminine. Then it became clear that that feminine spirit was some kind of a witch. Now, I don't want to make it seem as if it was that linear. And I don't know that the serpent imagery transformed into a thing that then transformed it. Maybe these were all just things happening at once in my head. So when that started happening, I just had no context and no way of understanding what was going on. I had no idea what was going on. I rather thought that maybe I had been repressing some major kind of gender need. Like perhaps I was trans or just some other variety of kind of like non-binary in a much more deep way or something that I had considered about myself before, although I've always thought of myself as, a little like wiggly or whatever. But if that was the case, then this would have had to have been, I was kind of thinking, gosh, maybe I'm so out of touch with myself that this whole thing is kind of split into a halfway psychotic process now, because now I think there's this other thing that's living. I couldn't even describe and still can't describe what to say about the anima. One way you might say is that she's living inside of you. Another thing you might say is that she's living somewhere else, very distant and ethereal maybe, but you're connected to her in some kind of a heart or mind way. There's other ways to think about her. In many ways, I think that the Jungian stuff doesn't explain anything. It just shifts some terms around and provides a taxonomy. It does more than that. I don't mean to minimize Jung's contributions to this field. They are immense. But for me, the situation still rather seems like some kind of alien witch in eternity reached out one day and put some kind of a hex on me that now requires the creation of all of this weird video to dispel. Something like that. And well, you see, I'm just so struck by the presence of all of this Hecate-related archetypal material in the precognitive artifacts. It goes right to the Medusa touch. You know, she's all over that book and all over that movie. I mean, really. Eventually I threw her into her statue, and then that felt a little more sane, but of course, you know, this is a device. She doesn't actually dwell in that statue, just like she doesn't actually dwell in me. I don't think she really exists in the world in a spatial, temporal way quite like that. It's just all metaphors. She's not anywhere. And she's not the only being you'll encounter and so on, but wow, she's really formidable. Like I keep saying on this channel, she's kind of here to cut off your head partially, and I think she's working maybe through or with me to make a big head cutting spell. I don't know, I feel like I'm kind of inching more and more in the direction of some spell that's really gonna catch. And I don't know how I feel about that. I'm pretty terrified because I've made myself very vulnerable on this channel now. And that's good. Like, for me, it's just become a place that's intolerable anymore. Trying to pretend and get along with the muggles and all of this, I just can't do it. I mean, I can do it to the extent that, you know, one needs to be functional in the world and do all this, but just kind of made a decision that, especially in my personal life, I need to surround myself with people that are going to reinforce my reality a little bit. It's very exhausting to sort of carry such a different perspective and constantly feel like you have to kind of defend it, and that's not true, like, because who cares? Like, what's happening in the world when you're interacting with people? Are you defending things? This never even comes up, you know? I just buy my groceries and, you know, hang out with the people and make the conversation and, you know, place the phone call and respond to the email and just do all the things in a normal way, and that's fine, but we all need intimacy. We all need that sort of connection, and right now, I have those kinds of connections, but they're all very virtual. They just occur through these machines. And that's a function of just, you know, how few and far between we are. And what do I mean by we here? Well, you know, I have my own weird beliefs and worldview about this stuff, so I would just think of everyone as adepts, something like that, you know. People with subtle psychic abilities that are being recruited into this big weird thing. I don't know. And so those people, I would not be alive, probably, if it weren't for the existence of these other people, and for my having, you know, found them. And that was only possible because of the work that all these great people did to make themselves visible and put this work into the world as a kind of beacon. So I'd just like to thank them, because people don't thank them. And I know what a hard and frightening thing it is to, you know, it's very hard for me to let a film like Radical Rewind exist on the internet in a way that could be traced back to me. And it's even more scary to let the spoiler edition, where I'm talking about this stuff in a somewhat like intense way, exist on, you know. I hope people get that I am, you know, very self-aware and very cognizant of how people react to me in all of this. I've made decisions to allow very deeply weird and so on, like, aspects of myself be seen here. And so far, that's a decision that's had very little practical consequences for me, but that would probably be different if I ever made anything that was successful in terms of the kind of raw number count, view count, things like this, the attention suddenly. And then there would probably be very many people judging me as a personality. And, I'm living in a pretty open way, at least online now. I don't talk about all aspects of my life in all places, but it would not be difficult for someone to learn intimate things about me if they were kind of doing a dive on me and looking at all my different accounts and so on. And that's fine. I guess my only real concern is being like doxxed by a lunatic. Something like that. Because, it just is the case that there are people in the world that are mentally ill in a dangerous way and develop fixations on people. And celebrities just deal with this. But they're equipped to deal with it because they're celebrities and they can afford things like private security and et cetera, et cetera. I think there's a real unacknowledged danger zone in our society that we don't take anywhere near seriously enough, which is what happens when people gain a sort of certain moderate level of internet fame that makes them very vulnerable to the same kinds of attacks that celebrities are vulnerable to, except that they're not famous enough to have the resources to combat any of those threats. And so there really needs to be a kind of government assist situation for people with this kind of middle moderate level of like weird internet fame, I think. You need to be able to go to the government and say, hey, I'm a YouTuber. There are 10 million people that are obsessed with me. And there's like 10 of those people that are really obsessed with me. And 5 of them would like to fuck me. And the other 5 of them would like to kill me. And the ones that want to fuck me might kill me in order to get it, So please, I need some surveillance on my house, and I need some, etc. And we need services to provide that for people. If society is going to, and to be clear, I know no one makes these decisions, but it's just emerged that there's a situation in society where we're dangling internet fame as a kind of carrot for people and saying, hey, if you can turn yourself into a personality and put yourself in a little YouTube box and make content that people love, you can just get paid to do that. And so, that's very enticing to a lot of people. And so a lot of people do that. But then sometimes people do that and they're not equipped to deal with the very rapid and strange fame that suddenly comes their way through this engine. So I'm not sure what's motivating me to think about that today. I mean, I am. I have an anticipation, I have an intuition that the analysis of Back to the Future predicts is going to light up some corner of the internet someday, maybe not immediately. But I think it has that potential just because it's a very smart person speaking very confidently about these ideas and taking this piece of art and piece of research, Back to the Future predicts 9/11, very seriously. But seriously also with a good humor in all of this. So I think maybe it strikes an interesting tone that could pull in a different sort of person. I mean, fundamentally I remain a little frustrated with kind of my old community, like the academic world. Like, I'm just annoyed with all of these folks on some level, because these are meant to be like citadels of knowledge, They could pay a little bit more attention to the very amazing intellectual and creative projects that are going on right now. I don't know, is it just me being nuts? Who cares? I'm just annoyed still that there isn't broader recognition, and that I somehow feel like it's my job to try to push for that, which is ridiculous, of course. It's not my job to do that. It's not nobody's job to do that. But we're all kind of working on that problem, of course, because we all believe very deeply in these ideas. And it just comes. It comes with this feeling that you need to share them. You need to help by making yourself some kind of a relay node for them. So I've been trying to do that, and I'm going to continue to try to do that, I suppose. What would it mean to be a famous witch? See, that's the thing, is I think there's a particular danger if you're trying to be visible as some kind of an occultist or a magician or just even a spiritual figure of some kind, because these are very heavy topics. And you're going to attract, I'm already attracting in my life, a certain sort of contingent of people that are probably quite seriously mentally ill and suffering quite a bit, and looking for help. Of course, I can't help these people. I'm not there with them, and I'm not a licensed psychiatrist or psychologist or anything like that. I don't, it's not my place. But it is my place to help magically inclined individuals that are activating. That really is my job. No one else is going to do that kind of thing. That's just up to us. It's up to those of us who have already passed through these initiatory periods to help a little bit the people that are coming up behind and about to go through this crazy video game. The issue, of course, is that it's almost impossible to differentiate a sync awakening from a psychosis in the early stages. It isn't clear that a sync awakening isn't just a particular response to a psychosis that allows us to kind of integrate it in a high-functioning way and get on with things. The thing is I really believe in this 9/11 precog issue, sort of independently of that. I think it may just be the case that when your brain breaks in a certain way, maybe it allows you to see this thing, but I still think the thing is objective, so maybe that's a measure of how deeply my brain is broken, I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's a real thing that's going on. It's just that there's also this other thing going on, which is that, we've touched on it already on this show, some mental athletics aspect to this. And, so anyway, since you don't know how to tell, it's hard to know how to help, because unfortunately, very often you want to give just exactly the opposite instructions to a larval synchead than you would give to someone who's developing bipolar disorder or someone who is about to have a very hard psychotic break or things like this. The last thing you want to tell those people is to go deeper into their fantasies. You want to tell those people to connect to solidifying, grounding things in the world, to seek out their family and friends and things like that, really. Whereas I would tell a young witch maybe to isolate and to go inside and, So how do you know who's who? This is also an issue for me, obviously, as someone who's trying to date. I think I've kind of realized that I can't probably exist with a muggle. I hate to draw lines like this in the world, but if someone can't get along with the very basic picture of extended mental abilities maybe being a real thing, and maybe I have some, and it's that's just so fundamental to how I can make sense of my life and be okay with it now, that I need to be with someone who at least isn't going to try to constantly undermine my very basic understanding of the world and myself. It's not necessary to me, of course, that friends or lovers or anyone that I interact with share my beliefs in some identical way. I don't, it's not about that so much as it's just about a basic kind of sympathetic attitude about the world. The world is a place that contains real magic and quite a bit of mystery, and that maybe it's a noble and good thing to orient one's life in the direction of understanding that to some degree. So I'm not sure what makes someone a witch or not. I don't know. I just know that one day there was this thing. Okay. Minds. This is all a bit disorganized. I'm really just fundamentally want to use my computer. My computer is rendering whatever I'm going to call this analysis of Back to the Future predicts. I kind of don't like the word analysis because it's not really descriptive of what I'm doing anymore. I mean, there is quite a bit of analysis, but really mostly I'm doing a more intuitive picture connection thing when I look at this stuff. I need a better word or something. But anyway, mines. Yeah, I come from a very long lineage of miners. Goes back to Cornwall, where they mined. So you don't know what my ancestors were mining in Cornwall. Something lucrative, I hope. And then at some point they got on a boat and came over to the United States, and they landed in Butte, Montana, where they worked in the mines extracting copper. And this is just a rather interesting story. Butte provided the copper that electrified the whole of the United States. Really, there wouldn't have been an electrical revolution in the way that there was if it weren't for the copper that Butte supplied. It was the majority of the metal that was used to make all the phone lines and all of the electric lines. It was the copper that was used to install light bulbs in the country. And that project, the electrification of America, it just was something that had a symbolic weight to it, of course, because it was about illumination. Electric light. That was a big dream. But it was a big dream that required a big sacrifice, because Butte is destroyed as a result. It's destroyed in many ways. The land is destroyed. There's a place there called the Pit. It was one of the mines, where it was a big open pit style mine, because eventually the demands for, it just escalated there. So anyway, this thing is now filled with water, and it's like the most toxic body of water in the country, maybe in the world or something. I don't remember the actual statistics. It's really polluted, and that's had other effects on the environment, and there are other similar terrible environmental issues there as a result of the mining operations. There's also, of course, the toll that those operations took on the people. Mining is hard work. And I think the average lifespan was 37. People died in those mines in brutal ways, and black lung and all, talk about all the terrible things that happen to people in mines. That had an impact on the psychology there over the generations, and you can see that. You can see it's a trauma-infused place in many ways. Doing better than it's done in probably a long time. Butte, I spent some time there recently. My parents are now retired there. And, it's getting on. The land is regrowing. Amazingly, there really are some areas that you wouldn't know it. You'd look at them and they just look green and lush now. But 50 years ago, they were decimated, So there are places there that are regrowing, and also, the people are healing. But it's somehow something so relevant here, because I don't think, it was such a huge sacrifice made for the big, shiny electric light that eventually becomes all of these screens. So there's kind of a line from the mining of the copper in Butte to the development of the shining, radiant electronic image that is now carrying forward all this weird synchronicity stuff. But it's just I don't think the sacrifice was ever acknowledged. Do people even know or remember this story? I don't think it's widely known that there was a place in America, a single particular place, that provided the vast majority of the copper that has enabled the modern world that we exist in now here. They were never thanked. Much less really compensated in any kind of a fair way. I mean, these were jobs. These people were all paid for their work in the mines, but yeah, they sure weren't fucking paid enough, were they? And for me, this was just very emphasized coming from Butte straight to Times Square, as it were. I just think there was a very big sacrifice made in rural America that then allowed urban America to exist. And I just think there must be a lot of bad feelings about that on some unconscious level in this country still. Probably quite a bit. And I think issues like that are motivating a lot of this energy around global warming and so on, as a political issue. It does feel rather like people in big cities who, just by virtue of the fact that they exist in these big cities where everything is constantly burning electricity and energy just to exist, we're all running these phones, and we're all running cars, and we're all, running just all this stuff. It's like those people now turning around and kind of blaming rural America for our environmental problems because they want to stay with coal and all of this and those are real problems. We can't stay with coal, and these people are not educated, and they don't understand global warming, and which is an actual thing. It's just a very simple systems loop, and if you understand it, then you understand it. So all of that's real, but I just feel like there's a basic kind of hypocrisy there that annoys me. And I'm a city dweller, and I identify with cities and so on. I don't really like living in rural areas, and it stresses me out, and I feel like I don't often get along with the people so well because I'm just strange. And although Butte, I have to say, is a very weird place. I felt more or less comfortable in Butte. It has a very fine collection of weirdos. How weird that I should be connected to all that. Because I, of course, am also a kind of miner, depth psychological miner, who has spent a long time in the mines, and in fact maybe it's taken a bit of a toll on me in a similar kind of way, I don't know. But like my ancestors, I just think the same thing is happening now. When you do invisible work down in the mines, you're just not going to be thanked. It's invisible work. And I guess I just need to get over that. I didn't do this work to be thanked, of course. I did it because I felt that I had to. The good news is that the mine should be a lot more safe now, because I built some bridges and strung up some lights down there and installed some air filters. I made some maps, put those maps on signs. I also marked off dangerous areas and tried to put up some guardrails and things. So should be ready now. People should be able to walk in there now and see all of the precious metals down there. Who's brave enough to walk in to the temple and see what's in there, I wonder. But it is rather becoming a thing where I just can't spend so much time in the mines anymore. I think it would probably kill me eventually, one way or another. So it's more the kind of thing that I'm just going to visit more now. Visit and give some tours of. Maybe occasionally I'll go down to my little corner of the mine where there are the ongoing mining projects and pick away at the wall a little bit. That would be something like the Circle K and so on. But yeah. It just does make me think about this stuff, We don't know what we're doing. We're guinea pigs. And I get nervous sometimes. I think about that fireball that happened in Butte. I don't know how people relate to that stuff. Maybe that was just like a fun internet anecdote for people. To me, that was a terrifying experience. Because what if it isn't what I think? What if it isn't kind of non-causative? What if it's quite causative in some way? What if that really wouldn't have happened if I hadn't made my piece, Radical Rewind? People don't know what I'm talking about. There's a section of the sync film I made where I overlay the 9/11 fireball with fireworks. I rendered and uploaded that video. And then that night, there was a fireball in the fireworks display because it was the night of July 3rd, which is where they have the show in Butte. Just a big biblical fireball erupted. It's just the same image, the same overlay, fireball and fireworks in real life. And in that instance, there was no real damage to anyone, just property damage, No one was hurt. What if someone had been hurt? What if someone had been hurt? And what if it's the case that I cast an accidental spell that caused something like that to happen in the world? Once we're through this non-local block, where you just kind of can't allow yourself to think that things like this could be happening, that it could be meaningful, etc. So I'm through that now. To me, there's no way that fireball is connected to my peace in some way. It's just a question of how. And it turns out, I'm just kind of thinking again, maybe that question of how is actually much more important and significant than we sometimes think. Of course, we can't answer these questions at the moment. We just have no idea what we're doing. But because we have no idea what we're doing, I just think it's extra careful. We just have to take extra precautions, maybe. Just a little bit. So I'm getting very into the idea of banishing rituals and just other kinds of grounding magic circle things that will provide a little bit of protection and so on. Because, the occult is a practical body of knowledge for dealing with the unconscious. And maybe all that emphasis on protection is there for a reason. I don't know. So I'll leave everyone with that ominous thought for this morning, because I am truly done talking now. I think I am going to try to go back to sleep, in fact, or I don't know, watch a YouTube video and see if that just happens. So, okay, goodbye. See you in the future.